I want you to, well, I want you to imagine for a second that you're at the absolute pinnacle of your career.
Right, like you've achieved everything society says you should want.
Exactly. You have the wealth, the global respect, the family, the beautiful home. You are quite literally at the top of your game.
Yeah, you're basically untouchable.
Right. And then suddenly, like right in the middle of a perfectly normal Tuesday, you start having these catastrophic, apocalyptic, waking visions.
And we really need to emphasize that these aren't just bad daydreams or intrusive thoughts.
No.
These are waking visions so vivid, so immersive and terrifying that they actually make you question the very fabric of your reality.
Yeah, like you don't just see them in your mind's eye, you feel the visceral terror of them in your bones.
Exactly. You see oceans of thick blood rolling across the landscape.
Yeah.
You see the complete destruction of everything you know and love.
And because you happen to be, a world-renowned expert in the human mind, your immediate terrifying conclusion is that you are losing yours.
Right. You look at the symptoms objectively and you diagnose yourself with terminal insanity.
It is a terrifying precipice to stand on, to know the clinical definition of a shattered mind and to realize you are ticking every single box.
It's a total nightmare scenario.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that terrifying realization is exactly where we're starting today. So, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to explore one of the most mysterious, agonizing, and ultimately influential documents in modern intellectual history.
We are talking about Carl Jung's The Red Book.
Yes, also known by its Latin title, Liber Novus. And we're basing this exploration on some truly incredible sources today. We've got an expert scholarly introduction by Sonu Shamdasani.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
It is. It details the wildly secretive history of the book.
Yeah.
And we're pairing that with actual translated excerpts directly from Jung's own handwritten text.
Which is huge because this is a text that was kept completely hidden from the general public for decades.
Yeah, a long time.
Following Jung's death, his family literally locked it away in a Swiss bank vault. Yeah, they were absolutely terrified of what it contained. It's raw, it's strange, and it challenges almost everything we think we know about the boundaries of the human mind. I mean, Shamdasani spent years just convincing the heirs to let the world see it.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to really grasp why a family would hide a book in a bank vault for half a century, we critically need to understand the context of Jung's life just before he put pen to paper.
Right.
Like, who exactly was Carl Jung in 1913?
Well, in 1913, Jung was nearly 40 years old. And as you mentioned, he was a wildly successful psychiatrist in Switzerland.
The top of his field.
Literally. He was the former managing editor of the premier psychoanalytic journal, and most importantly, he had been Sigmund Freud's hand-picked successor.
They were basically building the global psychoanalytic movement together.
Exactly. But by 1913, that relationship had violently fractured.
Because they fundamentally disagreed on the unconscious, right?
Right. Jung just couldn't accept Freud's strict view that the unconscious mind was basically a biological garbage dump for repressed sexual desires.
Yeah.
Jung felt there was something much older and much deeper going on in the human psyche.
But breaking with Freud didn't just cost him a friendship. It cost him his entire professional community.
He was completely ostracized.
Suddenly entirely isolated. And he writes about experiencing this profound sense of inner emptiness during this time.
Yeah.
He realized he had achieved all this outward success, but he had lost his inner compass. He described it as a total loss of his, quote, myth.
Which is a powerful way to phrase it.
I know, right? He was entirely disconnected from the ancestral, symbolic life that he believed was essential to actually feel grounded as a human being.
And, nature abhors a vacuum. When you lose your conscious grounding like that, the unconscious compensates.
Which brings us to the autumn of 1913. Right in the middle of this profound identity crisis, the visions begin.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, in October 1913, he's just sitting on a train journey to Schaffhausen, a totally mundane commuter train ride. And suddenly, he is completely overwhelmed by a waking vision of a catastrophic flood covering all of Northern Europe.
He sees yellow waves, floating rubble, and the uncounted bodies of thousands of people.
And this isn't just a quick flash, right? This hallucination lasts for 2 solid hours.
2 hours on a train. And it doesn't stop there. The vision returns a couple of weeks later, even more violent.
With the seas of blood.
Yes, seas of blood, and an inner voice tells him, look at it. It was completely real, and it will come to pass.
That is so eerie.
And then, by the summer of 1914, the imagery shifts. He starts having a series of recurring dreams where this terrible icy cold descends from space right in the middle of the European summer,
It's freezing everything.
freezing all living things. But in the midst of this desolate, frozen wasteland, he sees a single barren tree. And the frost somehow transforms the leaves of this tree into sweet, healing grapes.
Which he then picks and hands out to a waiting crowd.
Exactly.
I really want to pause here for a second because we have to think about the mechanics of what is happening to him.
Yeah, the clinical side.
Right, this isn't a mystic on a mountaintop seeking a vision. This is one of the world's leading clinical psychiatrists. I mean, he literally wrote the foundational medical text on the psychology of dementia praecox, which we now call schizophrenia.
He knows the clinical symptoms of madness better than almost anyone alive on the planet at that time.
Exactly. He knows that seeing apocalyptic floods while sitting on a commuter train is a textbook symptom of a psychotic break.
He genuinely believes his mind is disintegrating.
He must have been terrified.
He was. He writes that he felt he was, quote, menaced by a psychosis. He's basically holding on to his sanity by his fingernails.
But then, in August 1914, an external event happens that fundamentally shatters his understanding of what a hallucination even is.
World War I breaks out.
The geopolitical earthquake of the century.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how the outbreak of the First World War shifted Jung's entire paradigm.
How so?
Well, when the artillery started firing across Europe and the continent literally drowned in blood and rubble, he realized that his visions of floods, seas of blood, and a freezing of the world weren't a personal biological psychosis at all.
Right.
They were a precognition of a massive collective event. He realized that his individual mind was somehow tapping into a deeper, shared, subliminal layer of humanity.
Which he would later term the collective unconscious.
Precisely.
Wait, I have to challenge you on this.
Sure, go ahead.
Because to an outsider, isn't it incredibly dangerous, maybe even slightly arrogant, for a psychiatrist to just decide that his hallucinations are actually prophetic rather than a symptom of a severe mental illness?
It definitely sounds like a massive rationalization.
Right. Let me use an analogy here. It's like a seismometer in a lab. He's basically deciding his brain isn't fundamentally broken. He's deciding it's just a highly tuned seismic sensor picking up the societal tremors of Europe right before the geopolitical earthquake of World War I.
That's a great way to put it.
But mechanically, how could a single human mind possibly intercept the trauma of an entire continent? Isn't that a massive, almost mystical leap to make?
It is a massive leap, and I want to be clear here, Jung himself was terrified by it. He knew exactly how absurd and dangerous it looked from the outside.
And he goes against all his medical training.
It really does. But he didn't view the collective unconscious as magic or mysticism. He viewed it almost as an inherited architecture of the brain.
Okay.
Just as the human body contains the evolutionary history of our physical development, like how we still have tailbones, for instance, Jung theorized that the human psyche contains the evolutionary history of our mental development.
Right, the archetypes.
Yes, he called these inherited structures archetypes. So his brain wasn't like a radio receiver picking up a literal broadcast from the future.
Oh, okay.
Rather, the mounting, unexpressed psychological tension of millions of Europeans was activating these ancient apocalyptic archetypes deep within his own psyche.
So the internal apocalyptic imagery perfectly mirrored the external apocalyptic reality because they were born from the exact same underlying human tension.
Exactly.
That distinction is incredibly helpful. It's less about psychic prophecy and more about extreme psychological entanglement.
Yeah, he was feeling the pressure cooker of Europe inside his own skull.
But because he realized these visions held massive collective weight, he knew he couldn't just suppress them.
No, he couldn't.
He couldn't just lock himself in an asylum and medicate them away. He felt an obligation to explore them.
He had to lean into the chaos. He had to figure out what the unconscious was trying to say.
And that requires a method.
Right. He couldn't just sit back passively and wait to be overwhelmed by the next trained hallucination. He needed to take control of the process.
Which brings us to the mechanics of how he actually survived this period and produced the raw material that would become the Red Book.
The act of imagination.
Yes. The sources detail this rigorous process of self-experimentation that he developed, which he called active imagination. But how did this actually work in practice?
Well, active imagination is not just daydreaming. It's a highly demanding, deliberate practice.
What does he actually do?
Jung would go into his study, sit down, and intentionally lower the threshold of his consciousness while remaining totally awake.
That sounds really difficult.
Very. He would empty his mind, almost inducing a trance state, and just allow the fantasies and images from his unconscious to bubble up to the surface.
Okay, so he's watching the images.
But here's the critical part. Once an image appeared, he wouldn't just watch it like a movie. He would step into the fantasy and interact with it.
Oh, wow.
He would speak to the figures, argue with them, ask them questions, and listen to their answers. It was an active, often agonizing, theatrical confrontation within his own mind.
And the figures he conjures, or rather, I guess the figures that conjure themselves, are incredibly vivid.
Oh, absolutely.
Our sources point out some of these specific interactions. He meets his own, quote, soul, personified as a distinct entity.
Yeah.
He meets an old wise man named Elijah. And perhaps most importantly, he has these extensive dialogues with a guru-like figure named Philemon.
Right. Philemon is central to all this.
And Philemon is not just some guy in a robe. He is described as a pagan entity with the horns of a bull and the wings of a kingfisher.
Yeah, the imagery is wild. But Philemon isn't just a bizarre visual. He serves a very specific foundational psychological purpose.
What does he teach him?
Well, through his dialogues with Philemon, Jung learns the concept of psychic objectivity.
Okay, let's slow down there. What exactly is psychic objectivity?
It's the radical idea that the thoughts, images, and figures in our minds exist independently of our conscious ego.
Okay.
Before this, the prevailing thought in Western philosophy was basically, I think, therefore I am. If I have a thought, I created it. But Philemon taught Jung that the psyche is more like a dense forest. There are animals living in that forest. You might encounter a bear while walking through it, but you didn't create the bear.
And you certainly don't control it.
Exactly. Philemon was an autonomous entity within the psyche who possessed knowledge that Jung's conscious mind simply did not have. Philemon would say things that completely surprised Jung or argue points that Jung vehemently disagreed with.
Okay, I have to jump in here.
Yeah.
Because if I started telling my family about a winged guru with bullhorns who lives in my study and argues with me, they wouldn't call me a pioneer of deep psychology. They would quietly take my car keys away.
Fair point.
And Jung's own mind actually pushes back on this. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, you're talking about the Anima.
Yes. During this intense process, Jung hears a female inner voice, which he identifies as his Anima, the feminine aspect of his unconscious. And this voice tells him very clearly that what he is doing, all these vivid fantasies and dialogues, is, quote, art.
Yes. And he absolutely hates that.
He fiercely argues back against this voice. He insists it is nature, it is empirical science, it is emphatically not art.
Right.
But I really want to press you on this. If you are sitting in a room having highly dramatic dialogues with a winged kingfisherman named Philemon, how is that not just writing a fantasy novel? Why is he so furious at the idea of calling it art?
It's a vital question, and it really gets to the very core of his methodology. We have to understand why he violently rejected the label of art.
Okay, why?
For Jung, treating this experience as art gives the conscious ego an escape hatch.
Ah, I see.
If it's art, then it's a conscious invention. It's just an aesthetic exercise. It means he is the master of the material.
He's still in control.
Exactly. But Jung insisted he wasn't making these figures up. He was observing his own mind as an empirical scientist observing a natural phenomenon.
Like watching a storm.
Yes. If he called it art, he would be stripping the experience of its moral and psychological authority. He had to treat these inner figures as completely real, objective forces in order to actually be vulnerable to them and integrate the deeply painful lessons they were trying to teach him.
So calling it art is essentially a defense mechanism.
A huge defense mechanism to avoid the terrifying reality of the unconscious.
That makes a lot of sense. Because
Yeah.
if it's just a novel, you don't have to change your life based on what the characters tell you.
Exactly.
But if it's the raw, objective reality of your own psyche, you can't ignore it.
You have to act on it.
But that creates a massive practical problem, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, you have all this chaotic, terrifying, constantly shifting psychic material pouring out of you every day. How do you keep it from completely dissolving your waking life? You need some kind of containment system.
Exactly. You need a vessel to hold the chaos.
Which leads us to the physical artifact itself, the actual Red Book. Because the physical manifestation of this project is astounding.
It's a work of incredible labor.
It's a massive red leather folio. Jung didn't just type out his notes on a typewriter. He wrote the text onto thick parchment, using a calligraphic monastic script.
Like an old monk.
Literally. He illuminated the pages with intricate borders, huge historiated initials, and these incredible, geometrically complex abstract paintings.
The mandalas.
Right? He painted what he called mandalas, which were essentially daily symbolic snapshots of his inner state. The whole thing looks exactly like an illuminated manuscript from the Middle Ages. But why go to all that trouble?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the aesthetic of the book is deeply tied to its psychological purpose.
Okay.
Jung wrote in the text about a massive conflict between two forces within us. He called them the spirit of this time and the spirit of the depths.
What's the difference?
The spirit of this time is what we all operate in daily. It values usefulness, immediate meaning, rationality, science, efficiency, and the present moment.
Very 20th century.
Right. But the spirit of the depths is totally different. It embraces the irrational, the paradoxical, the mythic, and the ancestral.
And the sources mention that since childhood, Jung had felt this split internally. Like he felt he was literally two people.
Yes, personality number one and personality number two.
Right. Personality number one was the modern, rational, successful Swiss doctor. He paid the bills. He wrote the scientific papers.
He functioned in society.
Exactly. But personality number two was this ancient figure, someone who felt deeply connected to the sweeping arc of history, the Middle Ages, and the cosmos.
Precisely. And the creation of Liber Novus in this specific, laborious, medieval format was Jung's way of physically honoring personality number two.
He's giving it a voice.
He was giving tangible, physical form to the spirit of the depths. Because the modern world, with its typewriters and scientific journals, it simply had no vessel capable of holding the irrational and the mythic.
It's too clean.
Right. So he had to resurrect an ancient vessel to hold it.
I just think of the physical book like a time machine built out of ink and parchment, or maybe a technological speed bump.
The speed bump. I like that.
Yeah, because by forcing himself to use these medieval aesthetics, I mean, dipping a calligraphy pen, painstakingly painting these tiny borders for hours on end, Jung was purposefully forcing his incredibly fast, modern, rational mind to slow down.
He's throttling it.
Yes. He was forcing personality number one to sit in silence, submit to the process, and respect the ancient, irrational parts of his own psyche. The medium is absolutely the message here.
It really is. It was an act of extreme devotion to the unconscious. He was treating the irrational with the utmost seriousness.
And he kept it up for years.
Years. And that dedication, the actual teachings extracted from those agonizing years of active imagination, they became the bedrock of everything Jung would go on to publish for the rest of his life.
Right, let's transition to that wisdom.
Yeah.
Because doing all this monastic role play and painting mandalas would be completely pointless if it didn't actually cure his crisis.
True.
Did this bizarre self-experiment actually yield a psychological breakthrough? What did the spirit of the depths actually teach him in these dialogues?
Well, the core philosophy that emerges from Jung's dialogues with his soul is deeply paradoxical.
And what?
Through these conversations, he learns that the supreme meaning of life is not found in pure logic or rationality.
Okay.
The supreme meaning is actually a melting together of sense and nonsense. It is the union of laughter and worship.
That's beautiful.
It is. He realizes that to become a whole person, he must accept the small, banal, and even ridiculous parts of himself, what he termed his shadow.
Because up until 1913, he'd completely identified with his persona, right?
Exactly. He was the heroic, flawless, successful doctor, but the unconscious demanded that he embrace his own darkness, his failures, and his foolishness.
This terrifying personal crisis, this literal descent into his own mind, actually became Jung's template for universal human development.
It did.
He realized that the first half of life is all about outward achievement. You build a career, you build a family, you establish an ego, you are building the container.
Right.
But the second half of life requires a complete reversal. You have to turn inward to recover the neglected, irrational parts of your personality that you pushed aside to achieve that success.
He called this process individuation.
Individuation.
Yeah. Individuation is about becoming indivisible, becoming a whole, integrated person. And that requires integrating the unconscious, not just suppressing it to fit into polite society. It requires acknowledging the shadow.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
That's the big question.
I think the best way to understand individuation is through an analogy. Think of the first half of your life, like writing the base code of an operating system. You just needed to boot up, get a job, pay rent, and run the basic social programs.
Right, survival mode.
Exactly. But around midlife, around 40, those biological and social imperatives are met. And suddenly, that base operating system can't handle complex existential software. it starts glitching.
You feel empty.
Yes. You feel empty. Individuation is realizing that the OS that got you through your 20s and 30s is obsolete. You have to write entirely new source code for the rest of your life.
And you have to write it while the computer's still running, which is incredibly painful and disorienting.
Exactly. And the real kicker here, which I think is just brilliant, is found in a striking quote from the text.
Oh, about his path.
Yes. After filling this massive book with his profound visions and doing all this agonizing work, Jung explicitly tells the reader, I warn you away from my own path.
He rejects being a guru.
Completely. He insists he is not a savior. He says that living by someone else's example is a false path. He writes, may each go his own way. There is only one way, and that is your way.
It's so profound.
You can't just download Jung's code or some lifestyle guru's code. You have to descend into your own depths to write it yourself.
This raises an important question about how we handle the irrational in our own lives today. Because the modern world, our current spirit of this time, constantly tells us to suppress the irrational. If you feel empty or chaotic, the modern solution is to medicate it, distract yourself with screens, or optimize it away with productivity hacks.
Let's push it down.
Right. But Jung's work is a massive flashing warning light against that, because the central, terrifying lesson of the Red Book is that if the irrational is not acknowledged and integrated, it doesn't just disappear.
It goes underground.
It goes underground, it builds pressure, and it erupts. For the individual, it erupts as a midlife crisis, depression, or a neurosis.
And for society?
For society, as Jung saw so clearly in 1914, unintegrated psychic tension erupts violently as collective trauma and war.
Wow. So to bring this all together for you listening, the Red Book wasn't just a weird medieval diary of a man losing his mind. It was a radical, agonizing 16-year self-experiment.
A true descent.
Jung stared directly into the chaotic, terrifying abyss of his own mind, almost broke under the weight of it, and managed to forge the bedrock of modern analytical psychology out of the shattered pieces.
And then kept it hidden.
Right. Knowing how deeply the spirit of the times would misunderstand it, he kept it hidden in a cupboard, and his heirs kept it locked in a vault for decades.
It is a profound testament to the sheer courage required to face oneself entirely without relying on the comforting, rational illusions of the modern world.
It's the ultimate confrontation with the self.
Absolutely.
Jung wrote in the text, you yourselves are the fertile acre which bears everything that avails you. We spend so much of our time looking outward for answers, looking to the spirit of the times, to social media, to culture, to tell us who we are supposed to be.
Yeah, we look everywhere but inside.
But I want you to consider your own personality number 2. Think about those neglected, perhaps irrational parts of yourself, the parts you push away or hide or optimize out of existence just to survive and be productive in the modern world.
Those hidden parts hold vital psychic energy. They contain your creativity and your deeper meaning. And keeping them locked in the vault of your unconscious comes at a deep psychological cost.
So remember that image we started with, standing at the absolute pinnacle of your life, only to feel the ground completely give way beneath you, to feel that creeping emptiness. That is the moment the depths demand to be heard. So let me leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. If you were to sit alone in a quiet room tonight, if you were to deliberately turn off the spirit of the times, put away your phone, ignore your schedule, and actively invite the spirit of the depths to speak to you, what do you think it would say?